need to work on other excuses, hopefully by Saturday, to justify it.
Bourbon, it's a good excuse, right? Bourbon. Now I
Yeah,
was up too late with a bourbon. Sorry, I'm a
for
little
sure.
laggy today. Uh, So going back to the bourbon, I got a question for you. I was actually in Indy, last year at the 500, and I had a buddy, and I like to dabble in a little whiskey myself, and I'm actually a bourbon fan. But have you been to, I think it's like called Hotel Tango Whiskey there in downtown Indy?
I have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to live
What's that?
nice space. The spirits are great, and the fact that it's all kind of done under one roof, everything from gin, vodka, whiskey, moonshine. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, no, I didn't know it existed, and I had a buddy, and we were there, and I was like, man, and then the whole whiskey thing popped up. I'm like, I bet Alex has been there, but I laughed that you're a bourbon guy, and because we've got what I am absolutely anti-Scotch, completely can't do it. I like a little bit of Canadian whiskey. Like I feel like you're probably kind of got a little bit of the same taste palette as me. I mean, where are you at in regards to stuff like that? Canadian whiskey, I'm sure, is good. Not a Scotch guy, or are you a Scotch guy?
No, not a Scotch guy. It's funny. I started out kind of, I guess, being a Scotch guy-ish until I got introduced to bourbon, and then kind of my world changed. So my gateway bourbon, if you will, was Basil Hayden's. So that was the first thing I had where I was like, okay, that's actually really delicious. In terms of my top three at the moment, I'd say everything from a Weller Antique to a Michter's 10 to a Old Fitz 13 are maybe in my top three. But I've been fortunate enough to kind of have friends in this community to be able to like source some of the allocated bottles and such. But yeah, man, it's crazy how popular it's become, and it, almost as much fun, if not more fun for me than drinking it, is actually just the hunt and like going out to these random liquor stores across the nation, kind of where I am for races or tests or whatever, and stopping in and seeing if they have anything that's a good price. And I'd say 1 in 15 times you find something cool, and it's like a little victory. So that part is it's almost as much fun as drinking it.
Yeah, well, and I'm sure too. You travel as much as you do, and like there's little local distilleries, things like that. And you get a chance to kind of try some things out. Like I guess I know race weekend you're not necessarily really drinking, but you know what I mean. It gives you an opportunity to kind of I guess it's a fun hobby. Let's put it that way, right?
No, 100%. Yep. It's crazy how much money it takes up as well, which is frustrating. But I guess that's the same for all hobbies. The money fits.
Yeah, exactly. Hence why I haven't totally jumped into the sim racing thing yet either, because all of a sudden I'm going to have a $30,000 sim, and my wife's going to be like, "Why do we have this?"
Yeah.
So I do have one thing to bring up. I know you're a Patriots fan. As all this is swirling, the one actual news story out of real sports has been Tom Brady. Obviously, he's leaving New England. Obviously I'm an Arizona guy, so I'm a Cardinals fan, but Patriots have always been kind of my number two. And Brady, like I feel like as a Patriots fan, it's like I feel like nobody really feels. I think a lot of people were thinking people are going to hate Brady for moving. Like I feel like we're all kind of justified, and we're still Tom Brady fans. I don't know. How are you feeling about this whole thing, Alex?
No, 100%. Like I always said that I was a Tom Brady fan more than I was a Patriots fan. But then, having watched the Patriots for so long, I became a fan of a lot of the other players on that team. Some of which are still there, some of which are leaving or have already left. But yeah, ultimately, it's going to be very interesting and exciting to not only see how Tom does at the Bucs, but then also how the Patriots do without Tom, right? Because there's always been this question of, can Tom, have the success without Bill, and can Bill have the success without Tom? And I think now, in a roundabout way, not a black and white way, but we'll get an answer to that at least a little bit. So that's going to be very interesting to watch. And from a guy that's collecting a big salary now, I mean, it's probably pretty smart to go to Florida where it's tax free, isn't it?
Yeah, that's I never even looked at it that way, but I think you're absolutely spot on with that. But yeah, it should be interesting.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I was reading. So you became a Patriots fan. So when you were in Europe, that was the only American football you got, right?
was Patriots or Packers, which is weird. That was the only thing that was actually made it over to a broadcast. So it was before like streaming services and NFL Game Day Pass or whatever, or Red Zone, or anything like that. So I don't know what type of deal either those franchises or the NFL had with like the European sports networks, but it was Packers Patriots. Those were two options.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, too, because I know in Mexico, the Los Angeles Dodgers have a lot of Hispanic fans, and it's because the Dodgers in a lot of areas of Mexico, that's the only games that are aired on TV, and it's funny that certain teams kind of have that with certain countries, you know what I mean? And it just develops fan bases in these areas, where it's the only thing. I know, like the Seattle Mariners, I think, are really big in Japan, and it's because those games are actually aired over there. It's kind of weird the way that works, and I guess it's smart for certain franchises if somehow you can get those exclusive deals in certain countries, man, builds that international fan base. So, yeah, no
doubt. I mean, I'm sure it's just how much money you want to spend, like most things in life.
Right. Well, one thing I've never asked you, we've had you on a lot, but, I know we've talked about kind of your career in Europe, things like that, but I don't think I've ever actually really asked you, how the heck did you get your start in motorsports? I mean, what was your gateway drug? I mean, what was the opener, because I know a lot of people, their dads race, things like that. I mean, what was your first, what was your first, I guess, gateway into motorsports where you went, oh man, I like this. This is what I want to do.
So my dad was a landscape contractor. So the farthest thing from a race car driver or being involved in motorsports, but he actually lost his father at a pretty young age when he was about 12 or 13 years old. And one of his fondest memories that he ever had with his dad was going to motor races. And they actually went to a 500 when he was a kid. He doesn't remember much of it, but he was there nonetheless. And so kind of from like a young age, I was an only child, and my dad was quite a young dad and such. So to kind of have the similar kind of memory that he had with his father, he started taking me to the kart races at Laguna Seca. And so was kind of there watching Michael drive, Zanardi, Max Pappas, D'Amata, a lot of these guys in the golden era of kart, which became Champ Car, obviously. And so that was kind of our yearly trip that we took as our father-son bonding trip, if you will. And so that was kind of the first introduction to motorsports, but still through my young years, I played, t-ball and basketball and soccer and pee-wee football and all that sort of thing. And then for my 10th birthday, he took me to Las Vegas to kind of do a go-kart experience, go-kart school. And it was supposed to be kind of just a 3-day kind of gift to kind of drive in a go-kart. And at the end of it, the guy was like, Alex is actually pretty good, and he picked it up fairly quickly, and you should look at getting him into karting. And my dad was like, well, you're just trying to sell me a go-kart, and kind of dismissed it. But then for kind of the weeks and months after that, I kept telling my dad how much, I wanted to do it again and all this stuff. So he finally kind of caved and signed me up for an arrive and drive go-kart program at Sonoma Raceway at Sears Point. And it kind of all just snowballed from there.
Yeah. Well, and I know still to this day, your dad, I mean, he's highly involved in your program. It's funny because you said he came from landscaping and stuff, but now, I mean, he's highly involved, right? I mean, he's got a really good knack for the business side of this and things like that, right?
Yeah. I mean, he's been there since literally, obviously, day one in Las Vegas through every race. He hasn't missed a race. I'd say 70% of the tests. He's been my manager through everything that we dealt with in Europe and Formula One, and never really had anyone else working for us other than him and I. So we kind of learned the ins and outs of the business together, and now he's pretty kind of highly regarded in the young junior driver category for American kids, and he looks after 3 or 4 drivers coming through the Road to Indy program, and he's kind of made a new career for himself as a motorsports manager, which is pretty spectacular to see, considering it was all kind of on the job training that he learned through the processes with me. So he's been instrumental in really everything, and wouldn't be anywhere near where I am today without his influence and without his help.
Yeah. Well, and talking about when you went to Europe, and I know, into last year, Autosport had, kind of a top 50 drivers type of thing, and I think you were number 6 on the list. And obviously, I know we've talked about your time in Europe before, but, and coming back here to the States, and how, there was actually a lot of people, because of your last name, things like that, they didn't really associate you as being an American driver, and it's kind of the past 3 or 4 years has been a process, you know what I mean, of almost rebuilding, Alex Rossi, or but you see something like that where now all of a sudden, Formula One, the doors closed there. You went to IndyCar, you found a home. You're one of the top guys in the sport. Now you see the guys in Europe and things like Autosport recognizing you, going, "Oh man!" I mean, is that a little bit justifying for you? Going, it's like, kind of like, hey, you guys maybe should have taken a chance on me, and obviously, you're completely happy with where you're at now in your career, but is there part of you that kind of puts a little bit of smile on your face because you're getting that recognition in Europe now?
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I never felt like I felt really at home in Europe from the beginning, and I was able to be fortunate enough to be in teams that were good enough to win in every series that I competed in over there, and kind of got to F1 for the most part on merit. And so I never felt as though there wasn't kind of a respect or at least a knowledge that I had the capability of getting to F1. It was solely that Formula One's a very, very money driven sport, and at the end of the day, if you're not a Lewis Hamilton to a Sebastian Vettel to a Kimi Räikkönen type thing, there's probably 8 to 9 to 10 guys maybe that legitimately get paid to provide driving services in Formula One. And the other guys, while they get a paycheck, there's something else that they're bringing to the table. So, I'll use a Carlos Sainz, for example, who's a supremely talented driver, was very good in the kind of lower formulas and won in everything that he did. But his father owned a lot of the a fuel station in Spain. And I'm drawing a blank on the name of it now, but it was like an equivalent of a Shell, but in Spain only. And he was able to kind of subsidize with Red Bull shelving space and display cases in all of his gas stations for a trade to help offset his son's racing career, right? So yes, Carlos is a very good driver, but he would have never gotten the Red Bull deal had his father not had the gas stations to be able to display Red Bull products more predominantly than, say, a Monster or another type of energy drink competitor, which for Red Bull is brand value and awareness. So there's always some backstory to most of the guys in F1, unless you're kind of a superhuman superstar like a Lewis or a Max Verstappen or something where, it's purely they got there on talent. And I'm not saying that I was in that category, but what I am saying is that, we were just relying on that. We didn't have anything else really to offer a team. And ultimately, in my mind, that's one of the biggest downfalls of Formula One is it costs so much for these manufacturers to run each year. They need help from drivers. And that's not really the way it should be.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. And it just seems funny because I think motorsports, and obviously, the U.S. is a little bit different, but, it's still very much the same. And it's, it used to be you just could be a driver. Now it's, what's your social media following? What's your business connections? What's your media value? What do you do any TV? Do you have a YouTube channel? There's so much more now. And it's like, it's kind of crazy, especially in the last 10 years, this massive shift we've seen, whether you're Alex Rossi racing IndyCar, you're Jim Beaver racing off-road or somebody in Europe. It's just funny that the whole business model and what a driver brings to the table is so completely different now than it was even a decade ago,
No, it is. And in a way, it's kind of always existed, I think, to some degree. But yeah, I mean, definitely these days, as kind of the fan bases change and the budgets seemingly seem to go higher and higher each year, teams, they're businesses, right? And first and foremost, the team owners need to keep their lights on and feed their families at home as well. So I understand where it comes from, but it's a frustrating dynamic if you're on the driver's side of things trying to get a deal done. But, ultimately, as you said, it's the same across all different forms of motor